Greg, Dustin, and Brad here. Welcome to the Education of Weaponized Man podcast. And tonight, what we're going to talk about, we're going to dive into don't be a sucker for the sucker punch. Don't be a sucker for the sucker punch. I hear this all the time. In almost every tale somebody tells me about a violent assault they were in, there is inevitably the tale that involves the sucker punch. So tonight, we're going to break this down. Don't be a sucker for the sucker punch. Back in 30 seconds. Hey everybody, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Greg LeBuff, and I'm sharing insights for how I went from the victim of a brutal attempted murder to weaponizing my violent criminal assault, and how for the past 30 years, I've been helping good people just like you do the same. Welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. All right, everybody, we're back, and don't be a sucker for the sucker punch. So, first response to that, first reaction to sucker punch, guys.
No such thing as a sucker punch.
Almost in unison. No such thing as the sucker punch. Okay, who wants to elaborate a bit?
You'd have to be like, okay, go for it.
You know what? It doesn't exist. The reason why it doesn't exist is because there's always something that leads up to the sucker punch. An indicator, everybody, for example, bumped into a guy at the bar, right? And then all of a sudden, he's staring at me across the bar, and I'm hanging out with my friends, and I go to walk to the washroom, and this guy sucker punches. Well, he didn't sucker punch you because there was two incidences beforehand that led up to that event. You were already in something, my friend. You just didn't have the awareness to know that you were in something, right? So there's always something that leads up to the so-called sucker punch. Indicators, pre-incident indicators that are going to show themselves.
Okay, Dustin?
Yeah, I was literally going to say the same thing. There's always going to be some kind of pins that are there. You need to be able to see, the event horizon. We talk about scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, and there's always going to be some kind of preamble to it. You know what I mean? There's going to be something there, whether it's even just your intuition alone that you're relying on. Maybe there's not as much of an interaction in some scenarios, but there's still going to be some kind of, whether it's interpersonal communication, body language, or behavior, something is going to give you some kind of a pin that's going to, at least at a minimum, set off your intuition and tell you there's something going on before this inevitable sucker punch.
Okay. Yeah. So listen, what you guys are saying is simple enough that I think most people can understand it. So let me just come at it from a different viewpoint, right? First, let's do a definition. The dictionary defines a sucker punch as an unexpected punch or blow. Okay, so what both Coach Dustin and Brad are talking about is that the sucker punch doesn't exist. And the reason it doesn't exist is because the definition is it's an unexpected punch or blow. What they are talking about is the fact that there are what we call pre-incident indicators. And a large part of any personal protection training, a large part of the weaponizing process, is teaching people how to measure, how to read, how to understand the sequencing of violence. A green light, traffic light, does not turn red randomly. There is a sequence to it. If you understand the sequence, then you can predict with 1,000% certainty when a green light is about to turn red. Like it's easy because there's sequencing there. Okay, so the sucker punch, as most people define it, right? They say, yeah, the guy sucker punched it, an unexpected punch or blow. But in almost every scenario, there is pre-indicators, and oftentimes there's a pre-incident. Brad's example was being out at the bar or out at the stand. You're going to a hockey game. It doesn't make a difference, but you bump into somebody accidentally or somebody bumps into you, whatever it is, and then this guy now he's staring at you. Or this guy, you walk by and this guy makes a rude comment. Something. It doesn't matter what it is. What happened? You're driving in traffic and you're stopped at a red light and you happen to look to your right or left and there's somebody in the car and they happen to look back at you and they kind of squint at you as if to say, what the fuck are you looking at? Even though you're not looking at anything, you're doing the same thing they're fucking doing, which is just casually looking around while you're waiting for the light to turn green. But sometimes that's enough. And then 3 lights later, or you pull off, you go into the grocery store, and next you know, some guy walks up to you and smacks you in the fucking face or pushes you through the fucking Apple stand and is asking, what the fuck were you looking at? And your brain is going, what are you talking about? And then all of a sudden the guy just punches you out of nowhere. I was sucker punched. So yes, by definition, you got hit with an unexpected punch or blow. But was it a sucker punch? And the answer to that is no. Because when you have disengaged conflict, when something has happened, violence is always going to mutate, right? It moves in a linear progression. It is either going to mutate up or it's going to come back down. So the second you have any type of conflict, even if it's just that little eyes lock for a fraction of a second and the one guy squints at you as if to say, what the fuck are you looking at? And then it's over. It happened that quick. That was conflict. What will conflict do? It'll either mutate up or it'll go down. Right? Does that make sense, hopefully, for everybody? And so the survivable value lies in you understanding, accepting that it's going to go up. Like it can go up. Most times it's like, remove yourself from the situation. There's our first two options, right? Remove yourself from the situation, or you have to remove the situation. But you can't remove the situation until it's legally and morally justified to do that, until it becomes a threat. Like, right? The intent has to be there. So if there's no intent there, yet you find yourself in conflict, the easiest thing to do is remove yourself. Because the second you remove yourself, you're like, okay, I know I've removed myself, I'm safe. Now it's not mutating. It can't mutate. I'm no longer, the situation is no longer there. Obviously, the example we even used, the guy follows you. You have to understand that you're not being followed or he's not tracking you or whatever it is. Okay, so let's go at it this way, because one of the words that often gets thrown in with the sucker punch is the belief that violence is random. And what are your guys' thoughts on random violence?
I think that's even what we were talking about earlier. There's a blueprint, there's indicators, there's a formula to follow that shows you that this is violence. It's readable, right?
Okay,
Just
so
like
what about it being random? How does that connect to violence being random or not?
Yeah, because it's not random because it's predictable.
Okay, but isn't predictable different than random?
Well, yeah, predictable is different than random.
Like if you see, like you say, okay, well, someone says to you, violence is random, but there still might be indicators to it. But what would be the argument there as to whether violence is just, can violence be random? And you're on the right track. I just want you to articulate it more, because this is what happens. This is the conversation, right? We're talking about the sucker punch, and people believe that oh yeah, I got sucker punched. When in actuality, 99.9% of the time, someone says they were sucker punched, they weren't sucker punched. Shit happened before that, and people are like, they chose to ignore that shit, or they didn't understand the meaning of it, and then violence mutated in a very fucking clear, very trackable progression most of the time. I mean, sometimes it's a little more obscure, but it's always there if you understand what to look for. So the sucker punch, getting hit with an unexpected punch or blow, 99.99% of the time, you actually could have read this. There was pre-incident indicators. But then people go, yes, but that is not true when the violence is random in nature.
Yeah,
and how do we clear that? How do you clear that up for people?
I think Brad hit it with like the first thing he said, which was the violent criminal has a blueprint. So what to a bystander or someone seeing a news story or something might appear as like, oh yeah, let's say the violent criminal, they completely chose that person at random and attacked them. And you might think, if you don't have a good understanding of what violence is, it may look random, like they just picked that random person on the street. But like Brad was alluding to, these criminals have a blueprint. They're not picking people at random. They're purposely seeking out targets. They're looking for the easiest prey they can find based on blueprints that they have, either from previous crimes they've committed or crimes that they've seen other people commit or talk about. So they're very specific in choosing their target. They don't go out there and just randomly attack the first person that comes across them. Now they will if that person fits the mold, if it fits the blueprint. But if that first person that happens by is appears way bigger, way stronger, way more fit, or is in a group of people, or anything that breaks their blueprint, breaks their mold, they'll let that person go by and wait for the next person. So again, it doesn't. It seems random, but it's not. It's 100% calculated based on that blueprint or that mold that they have in looking for their victim.
Okay.
Well, I think, yeah, one of the things that kind of just popped in my head as you were talking, Dustin, is that they have an objective, right? So even you think of, gang initiation. They may not be looking for like the weakest person. They might be looking for the biggest guy that they gotta, assault or murder or kill or fight, whatever word they're gonna tie to that. But that's their objective. Their objective is to do that, right? So you can identify their indicators based on what they want.
Okay, so I'm kind of letting you guys set this up, and then I'm kind of either just trying to clarify or question off. It's to force you to go deeper on things, because I think that'll help people a lot in their understanding of this. So what you're presenting now, as I'm hearing you say it, is you're talking about the bad guy blueprint, meaning that, listen, violent predatory criminals, people that use violence and commit violent assaults, okay, they have a methodology, they have a system, they have done this before. So they have a blueprint that they use. Now, the blueprint isn't just how do I successfully rob a place, like a home invasion? How do I assault somebody to get their money or get their property or whatever it is? It is also a certain criteria. Like they are like the predator optics. They are looking for an individual that fits a certain type, right? Meaning it's just like a predator animal, an apex predator that is hunting isn't going to necessarily pick the strongest gazelle in the herd, right? They're going to pick the one that's isolated, the one that's injured, the one that's a little bit older, or they're going to pick something that they're like, listen, there's a very high likelihood of success in me taking this animal down and then eating, right? Like, I mean, it's just survival. Why would you're going to go for the most opportunistic or the easiest or combination thereof to attack? And so bad guys are the same way. So what you're saying, and you can correct me if you want to articulate this differently, is that because of this blueprint and what bad guys are looking for, it is not random. They are actively selecting. They are actively selecting and choosing who they target. Dustin, your analogy or your example of like, say, listen, some guy's out there and just like, fuck it, I'm just going to randomly stab the first motherfucker I see. And then a group of 5 NFL linebackers walks around the corner and they're, switched on, paying attention, fucking all, jacked up on fucking pre-workout or, they're just fucking vibrating, you know what I mean? And each of them was 300 pounds of muscle. Like that guy's probably going to be like, yeah. The very next people I see other than these guys, I'm going to fucking get that motherfucker. So you're saying that the randomness, they're looking for victims. They're again, like a predator lion is looking for its next meal, not just the next gazelle, not just the next species of animal that it likes to eat. It's looking for something more specific. So you're saying that negates the randomness. Is that accurate?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that was a very good, synopsis of what I was saying for sure. And I think where people go wrong is they assume that if a victim, if we want to call it that, doesn't know the violent criminal perpetrator, that automatically makes it random.
Yes.
And I think that's where people they keep it too simple. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, if you're looking at it just like that, I guess you could attach the word random to it. But as you just alluded to and everything I said is like, nothing about that was random from the criminal standpoint.
Well, that's just what popped in my head because it's perspective, right?
Yeah.
From the criminal standpoint, it wasn't random. But for the dude walking down the street with his head buried into his cell phone, he gets jumped by a couple guys.
Earphones in,
Exactly. I got jumped randomly. No, it wasn't random because you set yourself up because you're oblivious to your complete surroundings. You know, so maybe random by their part, but definitely not by violent criminal assault.
Okay. I'm just writing notes as I do this too, but this is very powerful, and this is something I was hoping you guys would say, because this is. I had a conversation earlier today in a private that centered on a lot of this, and this is one of the points that I brought up, and you guys did a great job of hitting on this. When people hear the word random, because here I'll make a very definitive statement: violence is never random, zero, never. It's never fucking random. Okay, and it's never random because exactly what Dustin just said. The second I say that with that much authority, that much conviction, people automatically want to go, I'm going to fucking prove you wrong. So you're saying that if I'm sitting on the fucking street corner, I'm in a fucking city, I'm in another part of the fucking world that I've never been to before, I don't know a single fucking soul there, and I just get off the plane and I'm sitting there, I don't know anyone, there's been no conflict, nobody knows me, and then all of a sudden, boom, I got a fucking tire iron to the back of the head. You're saying that that's not fucking random. And my answer to that is,
Correct.
Yeah, 100%.
Correct.
It is not random.
Yeah.
What people cue in on is what Dustin said. Just because he's a fucking stranger doesn't make it random. Right? He's a stranger. You don't know his name. So it's fucking random? You don't know why somebody's there or where someone's going to or what they do for, like, you get me? None of this shit makes it random. What these guys, what Dustin and Brad are articulating here is that there is a selection process. And if you understand the selection process, you have to understand that you can actually make yourself more attractive. You can say, hey, select me. I would make a great victim, because you see the perpetrator, and one of you guys said this, it's not random because it's never random to the guy that's using the tool of violence, that's committing the criminal act. It's not random to him. He's making a decision. Whether that decision is conscious or whether it's subconscious, whether he's taking a premeditated action or whether he's having a reaction to some emotional trauma or some negative fucking feeling or thought or belief or whatever it is, and he expresses on that, he's making a decision. And when you make that decision, he's selecting somebody. He's selecting an action, and then he is selecting someone to do it too. So you guys have done a great job of starting to like get people to say, listen, understand, just because somebody doesn't know your name, just because they don't know why you're there, just because it happened while you were sitting there, air quotes here, minding your own business. Really, I shouldn't put air quotes because you are just minding your own business. But somebody can select you. A fucking gazelle is grazing with the fucking herd, and all of a sudden a lion jumps at its throat. It's like, what the fuck? Why the fuck where did that fucking lion come from? You live in the desert, right? You're a fucking gazelle, right? Like, you're not the predator, right? You're prey, right? Like the food chain. You get it? It's like someone goes swimming in the ocean and go, motherfucking shark bit me. Are you? Well, what'd you fucking think? When you enter the ocean, you enter the food chain, and you are not at the top of the food chain. So no matter how rare it might be to encounter a shark and to get attacked by a shark, the shark didn't sucker punch you. Motherfucking shark, come out of nowhere. Here I am swimming in the ocean, minding my business, and that motherfucking shark, all the seals he could have eaten, and the motherfucker bites me. Not random. It's not random. I mean, it's shitty timing. You know what I mean? Like, wrong place, wrong time. Yeah, but it ain't random. So it's the same thing. Every day when you walk out of your house, like, there's other people on this planet. Some of whom are not nice people. Some of whom are very troubled people. Many of whom, and most of whom, who choose to express in very toxic ways. Not all violent. Some just rude, inappropriate, and aggressive. But yes, some violent. So it's not random. Because the individual that commits the act of violence, it's never random to them. They are selecting, they are choosing, they are making a decision. Now here's what also I want you guys to talk about a little bit, because one of the other things that I think is very important for people to understand is the timeline of violence. Let me just real clear, how fast violence can happen. How fast you can go from disengaged conflict or from no conflict. Because for some people, and this is, and you guys can explain this to me, but if I'm the example of I'm in a different country, I'm sitting, no one fucking knows me, no one, I'm just snap my fingers, and I'm in the middle of some foreign country, nobody knows me, just sitting there, and I'm literally just sitting there reading a book. So I'm not having eye contact with anybody, I'm sitting in stationary, I'm not bumping into anybody, I'm just sitting there. And then all of a sudden, boom, I get a tire iron to the back of the head, or all of a sudden, I'm getting punched and I'm getting kicked and thrown to the ground. How is that not random? Like, besides what we've already talked about. We've already talked about the fact that they selected me for some reason. So it might feel random to me, but to them it's not random. But the other side of the conversation is the suddenness of it. And that's where people, to tie it back in, will go, I got fucking sucker punched. And can you guys maybe break down for me how the suddenness of something can also lead us? Because again, it's the unexpected punch or blow. So how does the timeline, the speed at which violence can happen, how does that contribute to the belief or the I want to say like the folklore of the sucker punch, and also that connected randomness? How does that tie into the timeline?
I don't know if this is quite what you're getting at, but maybe. But I think there's that mistake where people think any sort of, fight or violence has to go through a certain timeline. Like you said, certain scenes have to happen, certain steps have to occur. There needs to be some sort of instigating thing, whether, like we talked about earlier, it's a bump, it's a push, it's a, whether it's on purpose or accidental, something has to happen first. Then there has to be this exchange of words. Then that has to escalate. And then violence has to ensue in one way or another, whether it's a punch or some kind of assault. Whereas what you're talking about is the suddenness of violence. A lot of times what we talk about is the blitz. Do you know what I mean? There's just that overwhelming, overpowering burst of violence. And I think people they don't have that on their radar. And they don't understand that that's, for the violent criminal, a very effective way to assault somebody is with this sort of blitz thing, which does start to mess with perhaps like this, what would the word be? Like just this expectation that the average person may have as how violence is supposed to happen. And then when it doesn't follow that drawn out timeline, they think, oh my God, it was so sudden. And then they somehow interpret that as, again, being random. I don't know. Does that make sense? I don't know if that hits on what you were talking about.
No, yeah, 100% it does. Brad, do you want to jump in on that as well?
Yeah, it's a lot of what Dustin's talking about is exactly kind of where my head went to, right? Because people think that, like with the social contract, it's like we have to both consent to this. We have to agree that this is what's happening, and that's kind of where one of the words that I kind of really kind of flash in my head is consent. And I think that's where people have a mistake and they have an oversight, is that when you're talking about with violence, there is no consent. Violent criminals will use an opportunity and will use suddenness and will use an overwhelming blitz to get what they want from you. There's no consent in that, right? Where people are like, well, that wasn't fair, I wasn't ready. That old bullshit, right? So it's like, just because, this doesn't go through what Dustin was explaining, these social parameters of agreeing to fight or whatever it is, it doesn't mean that you're not in something, and it's like, it doesn't happen the way that we see it on TV, where nobody's challenging you to a fucking duel, and it's like that's kind of, not the theater of operations that you're going to find with violence.
Okay. Yeah, really good. Let me just, again, try to paraphrase for everybody, because you guys are doing a very good job of bringing up key points that I want people to hear and know. If a stranger, like, it doesn't matter if I know them or don't, a stranger does not make something random, right? We've talked about this. Stranger doesn't make something random. And here's the thing when it comes to the timeline. You're just sitting there, you're reading your book, and all of a sudden, boom, you're being nailed in the head. And you say, well, listen, you're saying the sucker punch doesn't exist. Where were the fucking pre-incident indicators on that one? Like, I'm there reading a book, and all of a sudden you got a tire iron to the head. So how the fuck am I expected to like, am I supposed to be looking around all the time? But here's the thing, if we break this scenario down. If, in fact, you looked up from your book And why might you look up from the book?
Your intuition tells you
Okay,
to.
beautiful. You felt something. You just felt something, so you looked up. Your head came up. You might have felt like somebody's looking at me. You might have felt just an uncomfortableness, an awkwardness, a hunch, something. You looked up, okay, because you felt something. Why else might you look up from your book?
You might catch something in your peripheral vision,
Okay.
and that could be a proximity thing, meaning there was nobody within my peripheral, all of a sudden there was. Or it could also just be the speed with which people were moving through your peripheral. If you've got 10 people around you all standing waiting for a train, say you're in a train station, and then all of a sudden in your peripheral you see something moving much, much faster than everybody else coming towards you, that might cause you to look up, I would hope.
Yeah. Okay, so you felt something. You saw something out of your peripheral, a quick glance. You saw something moving off baseline of the way everything else was flowing. Something moved quicker. Something's moving slower. Something moved more erratic. Something made a sharp turn. Something paused when it doesn't make sense for something to pause. It doesn't matter. You're not intellectualizing this. You either felt something and it caused you to look up, or you saw something and it caused you to just take a quick glance. Or the third thing is
You heard
Or
something.
something.
you heard something. You could also feel something. Something could brush against you. Something could push into you. Something could be tactile. We're talking about your sensory faculties. You're seeing, you're hearing, you're touching, you're smelling, you're tasting, whatever the fuck it is. Your sensory faculties are your radar. It is how you are perceiving the world. So the thing I want to get at on the timeline is you say, I'm just down there, I'm reading my book. When you are just reading your book, minding your own fucking business, it is very, very possible and very probable that you will feel, see, or hear something that causes you to just look up. Now, you might not look up with any sense of panic or urgency. You're just going to look up. But when you look up, you may just scan left or right, and you may pick something up. Great. If you did, now you are reading the signs, right? That you're reading the signs, and that is what is preventing the sucker punch from ever happening. Because when somebody has intention to do harm, we are wired, our sensory faculties are wired to pick shit up, so long as we don't fucking ignore it. We don't let the logical brain tell us it's fucking nothing. So you don't go into denial. You don't rationalize it away, justify it, minimize it, make excuses, or flat out refuse to acknowledge it. You actually just take a quick look. And this has happened to everybody. Everybody has done this. There's no arguing with this. Everybody has had a feeling, just looked up and something caught their attention. And you don't know why you looked up, but you did. So whether you saw it, heard it, whatever, okay? But even if you don't, even if you might feel it, see, whatever, you don't do anything, it's just sitting there reading, and all of a sudden, boom, you get smoked in the back of the head. What stops that from being random, and you guys did a great, you said these words, you did a great definition of this, but is a lot of it is expectation. You can have a blueprint of how an assault should go. And Dustin talked about like the man dance, right? You know what I mean? Like somebody's going to come up and say something to me or push me or shove me or whatever. He's going to say this, I'm going to say that. He's going to square like you do this, I do that, you do this, I do that, you do this, the back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then maybe we fight. But you know, that's not the way it works. You don't just hit a guy when he's not looking, you dirty fucker. That's cheating. And Dustin talked about, well, that's the ambush. That's what violence is going to do. Violence doesn't fucking ask. It doesn't wait for consent. But you see what happened here? Because you had an expectation and the expectation turned out to be false, then what does that lead you to believe? Well, it leads you to believe that this was fucking random. Like, well, there's no warning to this. No, there was warnings to it. You just didn't see it. You didn't feel it. You didn't hear it. Or maybe you did and you didn't acknowledge it. Or maybe you didn't. The point is, it's still not fucking random. It's still not random. Just because it's a stranger to you doesn't make it random. And just because you didn't acknowledge what you may have saw, heard, felt, or intuited, that doesn't make it random. What it does is it just makes it a very fast timeline. You went from 0 to blitzed. From quiet to bombs and bullets. You know what I mean? Just boom, shit just blew up. Now, in that moment, it's like, how do you compensate for that? Like, how do you compensate from being blitzed? How do you compensate from being hit on the blind side? What would your guys' recommendations be or suggestions be?
Well, I think one of the words that popped in my head, because you said it just a few seconds ago, was expectations, right? And almost like an awareness or understanding, and that could happen, right? You could get blitzed like that, and should that happen, should you get caught in the blitz, you're in a life factor moment, and you get fucking blitzed. What's your solution to that? What's your game plan to that? Do you have something, or is this something that you're like, oh no, I never train and I never prepare myself from being on that part of things. I always train when we stand up, we line, we bow to each other, and we say, okay, you ready? Yep, you ready? Okay, touch gloves and let's go. Understanding that it's a part of violence and it can happen.
Perfect.
Yeah, the first thing that hit me, which ties exactly into what Brad's saying, is you have to have a threat-based perception of the world. We call it condition yellow. Well, how do you have that? Well, you have to study violence, which is exactly what Brad just described. If you understand what violence really is, what it can be, what it looks like, feels like, every part of it inside out, then it can't be random. There can't be a surprise, because you understand how it works. You understand there's blueprints. You understand what the different blueprints are, how they work, how criminals use them. If you understand all of that, there's no surprise. Do you know what I mean? It's no different than if you're going to go to a magic show and you're like, oh, I don't want any surprises. I don't want the magician to be able to surprise me in any way. Well, just find out what tricks he's going to be doing and then go find out how he does them all first. How good is the magic show going to be? Pretty boring, because you understand everything. That's what violence is. It's like studying violence just removes the illusion of all these expectations that people have. And so to me, that's how you do it. You have to study it. You have to have that condition yellow threat-based perception of the world.
Okay. Again, great answers. So I'll just, again, paraphrase and you guys make sure that I'm repeating what you guys are saying. So again, when you're sitting there by yourself and all of a sudden you don't feel it, you don't see it, you don't hear it, you don't intuit it, okay, or you ignore that, and all of a sudden, quiet to fucking bombs and bullets, you're being assaulted. What you guys are saying, as I'm hearing you say it, is that, again, if you've studied violence, then you have an expectation of it, right? Which is grounded in reality. And part of that expectation has to be that a stranger doesn't equal randomness any more than you knowing why you're being attacked contributes to randomness. Do you get what I mean? I think of it this way. You don't know them. So you go, they're a stranger, and that terrifies people because they go, well, this is random. What the fuck? I don't know what he wants. And that's the second thing is your brain goes, why me? What did I do? Why do I deserve this? Does he have the right guy? But both of those things can cause the individual, the target, to feel as if this is random, to feel as if they're being sucker punched. But the reality is that when you study the violence, you recognize that is how violence actually operates. I would say it this way. What's the difference between startled and surprised?
I think surprised would be that if you have startle, like a startle is a natural reaction, I would say. It's a startle flinch. We have the startle flinch response, right? But surprise, and we can have our startle flinch response activated, right? That's just part of our physiology. But I think surprised would be, again, not having an understanding of what's in front of you, not having an understanding that, you can't have a startle flinch, like not having an understanding of anything. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's kind of vague, but like, yeah. it's just like you're oblivious.
I think I agree with Brad. I think just another words to put to it, because I can think about it while he's talking, is, to me, a startle is it's just mostly to do with timing. You know, you didn't expect something to happen in that moment necessarily, so you get startled by it. Whereas if you're surprised by it, it's because it's not in alignment with your expectation of what could have happened. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So like when you're startled, you're like, "Oh, I didn't expect that right now." But the fact that it happened didn't surprise me. Didn't that was on my radar. I knew that could happen. I just didn't expect it right now. Whereas surprise is like, "Oh my god, I had no idea that that could even have happened." That's what my interpretation anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Let me make it, I think, even simpler a little bit. The startle flinch is physiology. Surprise is psychology.
Yeah, sure, perfect.
It's mindset, and it's literally exactly what you guys said. I mean, if something surprises me, it's like I didn't even know that was fucking possible. Like I'm fucking shocked. I'm
It's like you don't even know that
surprised.
existed.
I didn't even know that was a fucking thing. I didn't know that was an option. I didn't know this shit could fucking happen. I know exactly what it is to be surprised by violence. That's what I would say. Violence is its own fucking language. And you're surprised when you don't speak that fucking language. And Jesus Christ, I thought I understood this shit. So surprise is a failing in psychology. Your mindset, your perception, your fucking beliefs. Startle flinch, a startle is a physiological fact. We all can get startled. That's just the way it is. And in your example of the timing of something, it comes on more sudden than you expected. It comes on from a place you didn't expect. Whatever. It's a physiological response to a stimulus. Okay, it's physiology. Now, we all know that the first thing that happens when you're talking about violence is our emotional system gets impacted. So we can feel what a startle feels like, and then your feeling becomes your thoughts, and your thoughts impact your actions. So a surprise impacting the mind like that, where you're like, what the fuck? It can be very, very, very hard for people to overcome. But the word that I would put into this, and you guys can talk a little bit about the importance of this, rationalization and acceptance. And that has to come on the forefront. A large part of preparing someone to defend themselves is navigating them through what they must rationalize and ultimately accept. And as it pertains to tonight, we're talking about don't be a sucker to the fucking sucker punch. Here's two things. 99.99% of the violent situations that you'll probably ever face, there is no sucker punch. Why? Because you see the shit fucking coming. You see it building. 99% of the people that say they got sucker punched chose to ignore the warning signs. Right? And a quick story, there's a guy and he swears to God, it was random. I got jumped. It was random. It was random. It was random. Ask him all these questions. Really? Random? Like, no. Like there was nothing. No, nothing. I was just sitting there. I was just standing there, minding my business. And then boom, I got nailed. This guy jumped me. Fucking random. Really? 20 minutes of probing and questioning and flipping the angles on this. And 25 minutes later, the guy goes, well, because the question was, you'd never seen this guy a day in your life. Complete, total fucking stranger. Like, not like you saw him every day sitting at the bus stop. Never talked to him, didn't know who he is, but you've never seen him. Well, no, a couple weeks before, we bumped into each other at the bar and kind of had a few words. But that was 2 weeks earlier. This was 2 weeks later, and I was sitting there minding my own business, and next thing you know, the guy fucking punched me. Oh. So it wasn't a sucker punch. You chose to ignore the fact that there was conflict, disengaged conflict, and that conflict mutates. Conflict is either going up or down. For him, it kept going up. For you, maybe it went down. You forgot about it, said whatever, but it's not about you. So it was going up, and you chose to ignore. You're fucking too dumb to recognize that people can hold on to shit. And so 2 weeks later, 2 fucking months later, this guy can still be a potential problem for you, which turns out he was. So 99% of the time, it's not fucking random. The odd time, somebody is literally just, I have tons of video on it. Guy, briefcase, coming from work, just walking down the street, must be 6 o'clock in the evening. Walking along, looks like the dude's fucking whistling, like he's just doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, super happy. And from behind him, this guy comes running up, has a brick in his hand, and smashes the guy on top of the head. Now, this guy, if we go back far enough, maybe this guy walking, whistling his happy song, maybe he passed this guy earlier, sitting on the side or standing there with a brick in his hand, looking sketchy, looking at people, fucking weird behavior, I don't know, whatever. So maybe there could have been, it wasn't a sucker punch because that guy, you don't walk by somebody who's giving off a sketchy fucking vibe or erratic fucking off baseline behavior and he has a brick in his fucking hand. You don't walk by him and go, well, I'm past him 10 feet. I don't have to worry about this guy. Like you have to pay attention to shit. But let's assume none of that happened. It was completely out of the blue. It's not random because the guy with the brick selected him. Why? Because in whatever way, shape, and form, he presented himself as an attractive target. So he runs up. Now, the brick hits him on the back of the head. Is it random? No. Does it blindside him? Yes. But does he get startled or does he get surprised? In this situation, he got surprised. He got startled and he got surprised. He got hit with the brick, fell to the ground, and then he's looking around, eyes as big as fucking saucers, and he's got a complete cognitive disconnect. His brain has not even processed, I'm under attack. If I'm walking down the street and all of a sudden something thwops me in the back of the fucking head, if I'm still conscious, like so long as I'm not injured, where I'm out of it and incapacitated, if I'm still conscious, I'm turning and preparing to engage. Now it turns out something fell off of a building, a flower pot was sitting up on somebody's ledge, fell off, cracking in the fucking skull, but I spun around thinking what? Prepared for what?
Under attack. You're under attack.
Would it startle me when it hits me in the head?
Yeah, of course it's
Yeah,
startle
fuck,
you.
it's going to startle me.
It's
You kidding me?
falling, Greg.
I'm human. I have a nervous system. Of course it's going to startle, flinch me. But what's going to happen is my brain's going to go, well, I just got hit. I got hit hard enough and in a vital spot of my body that if I take another hit there, I could be killed or incapacitated if I'm lucky enough to not already be so. So I'm going to turn around with the shields up, fucking cannons online, you know what I mean? Ready to do what I need to do. But how does that happen?
Not by accident.
Not by accident, by design, but how does that happen?
Because it's conditioning. You're again. I think you're more tied into the psychology side of things of that, is because you've taken a hit. Why the fuck are we taking a hit? There's no survivable value to think that a branch fell. You turn and be like, somebody hit me. Like it's not very often we're walking down the street, we just get hit in the back of the head, right? So you by design, it's like, well, I'm preparing to defend myself. Now, should you turn around and be like, well, that was just a tree or was whatever, it's like, okay, standing down, but there's no survival value being like, I'm going to turn around and see what that was. And if that is a threat, I'll process it in that moment and then I'll deal with it. Well, you just chewed up valuable time in defending yourself.
So what did you say at the very beginning of this section of this question of it? Threat-based
Perception.
Yeah, sorry, finish it. Threat-based perception of the world. Okay? How do you get a threat-based perception of the world? Sorry, we can't hear you, Dustin. Your audio's either muted or we've lost audio for you.
Sorry, I muted it. Yeah. I did say threat-based perception of the world on mute.
Gotcha. Well, now, at least I know why I didn't hear it.
I thought you were reading lips. I guess not.
I should have paid better attention. I probably could have. But anyways, so threat-based perception of the world. How do you get the threat-based perception of the world? Well, what did I say? Rationalization and acceptance. Of what? Of the fact that there are people in this world, if you give them even half a chance, they'll hurt you. That's it. It's not that everybody in this world is out to get you. Majority, my personal belief, the majority of people in the world are super fucking kind, caring, loving people. There's a minority, a very small minority, that are fucking predator. There's
Well-
a percentage of the population that is just so under fucking stress and pressure and toxic and corrosive in their lives, their thinking and emotions, that without even consciously wanting to, they can explode at any point in time. And they
Here's
can hurt you. That's
There's
just
a
the reality.
super simple analogy. If you're driving down the street and there's a 4-year-old standing at the edge of the road, are you pulling your foot off the gas and getting it prepared to hit the brake? You're not necessarily going to hit the brake, but are you going to be prepared to hit the brake? I think most drivers would be like, yep. Why? Does every 4-year-old who sees a car coming immediately run into traffic?
Yeah.
No. But is there value in being prepared that that kid might? Of course.
100%.
And if the kid doesn't run out into the road, what do? Put your foot back on the accelerator and carry on about your day. It doesn't have to be anything more than that.
Yeah.
And violence is no different.
And so that allows you to do what? What does that take out? It takes out the surprise. Now, if that 4-year-old jumped off the curb, you're going to have a startle. Your heart's going to jump with a kid.
Oh yeah.
Because oh, Jesus fucking Christ. And you're, you're going to feel the physiological response, of that kid making that maneuver. Now, if you slow down and were well within your abilities to stop and maneuver around, you'd probably be a little bit more angry, or you'd be shaking your head. Like, you probably wouldn't startle flinch. It's when the onset of the stressor happens fast, or you are unfamiliar with it. And that's where it crosses into surprise. So that startle versus surprise. And again, like, some people I could see where, as they're listening to this, kind of, they have this thing where it's like, well, you're sitting there, you're minding your own business, you don't see, hear, or feel it, and you're sitting there and all of a sudden somebody fucking whacks you in the back of the fucking head. That's a fucking sucker punch. And it's like, well, in the sense that it was an unexpected blow or punch, sure, but at the same time, it wasn't unexpected. Like, I can go to bed. I will go to bed tonight in my house. My house. Doors fucking locked. I've lived in a house for 51 years of my life. Not even the first year of my life that I live in a hut or out in a field. 51 years I've lived in a house, and not once in those 51 years have I woken up to a stranger over top of me in the bed or in my house. Never once has that happened. Yet tonight, when I go to bed, if I wake up in the middle of the night and find someone in my house or in my bedroom or fucking punching or stabbing me while I'm fucking sleeping soundly in my bed, I will not be surprised. Why? Will I be startled? Yep. But I can recover the startle flinch. The startle flinch is a safety mechanism that gets you and tries to buy you time to get the fuck in the fight. That's why you push away from danger. That's why you fucking body orientate. Now, you can get bilateral symmetry and all these different things, but when you train, you weaponize your startle flinch so that you take all of the natural body reactions and reflexes and responses, and you weaponize them, you make them more tactical. So that not only does it buy you time to get the fuck in the fight and try to minimize damage and survive, but you can make that more efficient. And then I'm not going to be surprised when I go from startled very fucking quickly. All training is about shortening the reaction time model. So when you have the startle flinch, an untrained individual will startle flinch and get caught in startle flinch. Maybe 3 seconds, maybe 2 seconds, maybe a second. A trained individual will get startle flinched and recover in a quarter of a second, or a half a second, or a second. But their response, their recovery from the startle flinch is going to be infinitely faster, and they're not going to run into the psychological barrier, the unweaponized mindset of surprise, where you are trying to go, why, who, what? You must have the wrong house. Oh my God, what about my kids? What about my wife? Surprise, cognitive disconnect, stall, delay, virtually you are assisting in your own homicide because you couldn't rationalize and accept the fact that you may wake up one day, some motherfucker may come in your house while you're there. And that motherfucker, while he's there, may want to hurt you, may want to hurt your kids. That's it. It doesn't take much to rationalize and accept that. But do you see where that, A, takes away the randomness? Just because I fucking don't know him and they don't know me doesn't make it random. They selected the house for whatever fucking reason. They selected to do what they're doing for reasons. I don't know those reasons, but they had them. And just because it happens, the suddenness, the sudden onset of it, again, doesn't make it random. I didn't get sucker punched while I slept. Like, by definition, yeah, the first stab or him trying to cut through the throat or something like that, yeah, it was an unexpected blow, right? But I'm not sitting there going, he sucker punched me. Well, that's violence. They're going to ambush you. That's what they do. And if violent predator who does an ambush isn't much of a predator. A lion doesn't, walk through the jungle. Look, there's the gazelles. Roar! You know what I mean? Announces his presence with his giant manly roar, like hoping that I'm going to roar so fucking loud, one of those motherfucking gazelles is going to have a fucking heart attack. And then I'm going to eat that motherfucker. That's how you hunt, son. That's how you hunt. Fuck all this stalking bullshit. Fuck trying to, select the weakest and separate them from the fucking herd. Screw that shit. You just got to walk in there. You got to wear your little brother's lion mane so it looks bigger, and then you roar your fucking ass off and they fall over dead, and then you eat.
That's why all the female lions hunt, because they don't have the ego.
They don't have the ego. Exactly. They'll actually fucking hunt. They'll do what it takes. No shit. Yeah. So I think you guys did a great job of sharing insights and hitting some really key things for the sucker punch. And, again, you can't be a sucker for the sucker punch. Let's just see it for what it is. So, and again, I have no problem with the term sucker punch if people actually understood it. Yeah, you got hit with an unexpected blow. But people say it as in they're complaining to the referee. I got hit with you fucking sucker punched me. There's no honor in that motherfucker, that cheat. It's an excuse as to why they didn't respond, as to why they lost, as to why they whatever. And maybe this is a good thing to end on, right? Because as I'm talking about this, I know that men and their egos, and this includes me, I had to go through this. We all have to go through this. But, if something happens where we got jumped, I got suckered, I got ambushed, whatever the fuck it is, they come out of nowhere, just, blah, blah, blah. Part of it is we have not rationalized and accepted what happens in violence or what can happen in war. And the analogy I was used is if you took, there's you take any number of the 1% of elite operators in the world, the DevRo guys, the SEAL Team 6 guys, those kind of guys, the 1% of the 1%, the very best. And you take those guys, and I take 1,000 other soldiers, and I snap my fingers, and these guys materialize suddenly. These guys go from their home to the battlefield, full kit, full gear, and the second they materialize and their boots hit the battlefield, a bullet comes through and takes out that 1% of the one guy, takes out the best warrior on that field. Bullet slight right through his head. Down he goes. Is he any less of a warrior?
Absolutely not.
Of course not. No. That's the fucking fog of war. That's combat. That's the way. That's what violence is. Now here's the thing. That bullet, his boots materialize. They materialize that battlefield. A bullet rips through his head. He's fucking dead. So what is he going to do? Well, nothing. What can be done? You're fucking dead. It's over. If, as they materialize on the battlefield, the man standing right in front of him, bullet rips through his head, is he going to have a startle flinch? Going from beamed out of his home and all of a sudden full battle gear on a battlefield with fucking 1,000 other guys, but all of a sudden doesn't even hear the shot, just and sees this guy drop. What's he going to do? He's going to startle, and then what's he going to do?
Respond.
He's going to fucking respond. He's going to either move for cover. He's going to, draw his weapon, return fire. He's going to do what he's going to fucking do strategically, tactically. He's going to do what he's going to fucking do. He's going to kick straight into action. He'll bypass surprise. He'll go from startle to complex motor survival program. And by complex, I don't mean hard. I mean complex in the sense that hardwired into his nervous system. His survival motor system will activate. The startle flinch will get him to, help him survive the first boom. And then he'll go right past surprise and straight into fucking action. So you see how the speed of the timeline doesn't make it random. Violence is not random. It never is. It never will be. But part of that is rationalizing and accepting that you may get very little warning or no warning. Now, we know 99% of all people survive violent encounters said that they felt something beforehand. Everybody, in hindsight, but not everybody acknowledged it when it happened. It was only later that they go, fuck, I remember having this feeling. I remember seeing this or hearing this. So it happens that, but it's whether or not we recognize that it's happened to us. And the better you're trained, the less you ignore your sensory faculties, the more you develop your filter. Your radar is activated and you tend to pay attention when something pings, no matter how small or faint the ping is. And that, again, prevents the unexpected blow or punch, thereby negating the sucker punch. But even if no warnings, or at least you didn't pick up on it or you didn't acknowledge it, and boom, you're being hit, yeah, something unexpected happened. Startle is going to activate, but you're going to bypass surprise and get your head in the game. You're going to start engaging, start moving forward. So we got to get rid of the word random, and we got to really, truly understand what the sucker punch is. And it is not the way that people use it. People use it as an excuse, right? To again, oh, he sucker punched me. You're using it as an excuse because you're too stupid to recognize that the guy that you've been having words with or giving looks at, every time you guys see each other, you give each other little looks, or you posture, puff your chest towards that guy or whatever, that you didn't think it was going to go somewhere. Anyways, and final thoughts from you guys on it.
I just got reminded of a quote from Les Brown. He says, there's only reasons and results. And I think of that, the reasons is that's the excuses.
Yep.
If you get sucker punched or, blitzed, as we talk about it, it's if you're just all reasons, it's because you're not weaponized. You don't understand violence. You haven't studied violence. You don't get that violence is its own language, right? But if you have all those things, then there's just results. There's responses, like you just talked about with the tier 1 operators. They're not sitting around giving reasons as to why they should or shouldn't or this or that, or it's just response. It's just results. That's it.
Yeah, very well said. I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, just for me, just real quick, is that, I guess you could disagree with our standpoint and our kind of topic that we're talking about, but then tune in next week where we talk about denial.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Great closing statements, you guys. Really good. And again, I really wanted to do this in a way where I came at it more asking questions, and you guys did a phenomenal job at making sure the immutable concepts came to the forefront, and then I just tried to paraphrase them back to you. So well done, you guys, and I really appreciate that. And again, that's just really this episode was a great example of your guys' domain knowledge, and one of the things that we really try to do with everybody that's training with us, regardless of how long they've been training, from day one, we need people to understand the why. It's the old, to get biblical, right? If you teach a man, or if you feed him a fish, you feed him for a day. You don't just catch him a fish and feed him. You got to teach him how to fish. And this was a great example of this. This is really, I would say this is one of the better examples of how we train people. We question people. And I mean that in the sense of we don't just tell people, hey, do this. I want people to understand why we're doing it. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. And how you do it can only ever be properly dialed in from the understanding to why we do it. And so you really create strategic thinkers. And we all know our greatest weapon is our mind, and it's the asymmetrical strategies and all that type of stuff. But it is really understanding why you're doing shit. And you guys you really did a great example of, again, with no pre-planning, you hit every key point that I wanted to make. You guys brought it out without any coaching. That's just from your guys' understanding of it. So for anyone that's listening to this episode, it's a really, really good episode to really get, especially if you understand that I don't tell these guys what we're going to talk about. None of it's pre-planned. It's just organic conversation. So really, really great example of deep domain knowledge, guys. So very well done. And we'll leave it at that. And next week, maybe we will talk about denial. We'll see what comments and feedback we get off this. But yeah, anybody that has any pushback to this, it's because you've been sucker punched, and you're ready to stand on your box and your story saying, no, there was no indicators, when we know that
We'll see.
questioned enough, there's always indicators. All right, everybody, that is it. Listen, guys, stay safe, stay weaponized. Make sure like, comment, share. This is how we grow. Follow us on YouTube. We're really going to start investing a lot into trying to grow our presence organically on YouTube, as well as our Facebook. So we'd appreciate a like, follow. Don't forget to head over to wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And please take the time to comment or leave a rating. And if you think we're deserving of it, a 5-star rating really does help us, help other like-minded people find us. That is how we do this. So it's definitely a slower process. I don't want to throw a lot of money at this and paid ads, because I want people that resonate with what our message is and what our voice is and what our passion and purpose is. So the only way that we can do this is by finding other like-minded people and them telling people about this. So please use your voice, lend us your voice. I would love you a long, long time for that. So that's it. All right. Stay safe, stay weaponized. Chat again soon, everybody.